The sound of footsteps echoed through the cold stone corridors of the Tower of London, a place already steeped in secrets and shadows. Beneath its ancient walls, the chilling silence was only broken by the soft drip of rain from a storm that swept through the night. The two boys, once heirs to the greatest throne in the land, had vanished without a trace. Not a whisper, not a struggle, only the suffocating stillness that now hung thick in the air. The whispers outside the tower grew louder. People dared to ask the unspeakable. Were they truly hidden away for their safety, or had their uncle's ambition sealed their fate forever? But as the years passed, the rumors turned darker still. Did the tower itself claim their lives, burying them beneath its cursed floors? Or were their young souls snuffed out by unseen hands, leaving them to roam the chambers forever, unable to rest? The truth had long since been swallowed by the tower's walls. But tonight, beneath the weight of centuries, the shadows seemed to shift, as if the princes themselves were calling out from the darkness, begging to be found. This is the forgotten dark mystery of the Princes in the Tower from the year 1483 to the 1500s. The story of the Princes in the Tower is one of the most infamous and enduring mysteries in British history. It weaves together political intrigue, betrayal, and royal ambition with the tragic disappearance of two young boys who were next in line for the English throne. The tale unfolds in the late 15th century, but casts its long, eerie shadow well into the 1500s as people searched for answers to one of England's greatest historical enigmas. The year is 1483, and England is in the grip of civil war. The War of the Roses, a brutal and bloody conflict between two branches of the royal family, the House of Lancaster and the House of York, has ravaged the country for decades. As the dust settles on the battlefield, Edward IV of the House of York emerges victorious, finally securing the English throne. His reign brings a brief period of relative peace, but this tranquility is shattered with his untimely death in April of 1483. At the time of his passing, Edward IV leaves behind two young sons, Edward, Prince of Wales, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York. Edward, just 12 years old, is the rightful heir to the throne, while his brother Richard, only 9, stands as his closest supporter and second in line. In the aftermath of their father's death, the kingdom is plunged into uncertainty, and the question of who will control the throne looms large. Following Edward IV's death, his eldest son, now King Edward V, is too young to rule alone. The late king had named his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, as the protector of the realm and guardian of his sons. This seemed a reasonable decision. Richard had been loyal to Edward IV, a skilled soldier and administrator who was trusted by many. But as history would soon reveal, his ambitions may have stretched far beyond the role of a humble protector. Young Edward V and his brother Richard, Duke of York, were housed in the Tower of London, which, at the time, was not only a prison but also a royal residence. Traditionally, monarchs would stay in the tower before their coronation, and the boys were awaiting Edward's coronation as king. What was meant to be a brief stay became an indefinite imprisonment, as Richard of Gloucester rapidly moved to consolidate his power. Rumors began to swirl. Richard, it was said, had no intention of allowing his nephew to become king. Within weeks of Edward IV's death, Richard declared the marriage of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville, the prince's mother, illegitimate, effectively rendering the young boys illegitimate as well. In June 1483, the Duke of Gloucester claimed the throne for himself, becoming King Richard III. The princes remained in the tower, unseen by the public, as their fate grew ever more uncertain. By the summer of 1483, the two princes were still held within the walls of the Tower of London. Initially, they were occasionally seen playing in the garden or at the windows of their chambers, but these glimpses soon ceased. Witnesses claimed that after mid-July, the boys vanished from public view entirely. They were never seen alive again. The Tower of London, once a symbol of royal residence and tradition, now became a chilling fortress of mystery. What happened to Edward V and Richard, Duke of York? Were they imprisoned deeper within the tower, hidden away from sight? Or, as many whispered, had they met a more sinister end? Theories abounded, but the most popular and enduring belief was that the boys had been unalived, possibly on the orders of Richard III himself. Several accounts from that time, including those of chroniclers like Thomas More and foreign diplomats, suggested that the young princes were suffocated in their sleep, their bodies buried in secret within the tower's grounds. Richard III's ascension to the throne was plagued by these rumors. His legitimacy was questioned, and many saw him as a usurper who had orchestrated the demise of his nephews to secure his position. As a result, his reign was short-lived and turbulent. In 1485, just 2 years after the prince's disappearance, Richard III was defeated and killed at the Battle of Bosworth Field by Henry Tudor, who became King Henry VII. The fate of the princes remained a subject of intense speculation throughout the 1500s. Under the reign of Henry VII, the new Tudor dynasty had a vested interest in cementing its legitimacy. Henry had married Elizabeth of York, the sister of the princes, thus uniting the two warring houses of Lancaster and York. But the shadow of the missing princes loomed large over the Tudor dynasty. Many suspected that Richard III was guilty of the prince's unaliving, but there were those who believed that Henry VII himself may have played a role. After all, the princes posed a threat to his claim to the throne, as they were the rightful heirs by blood. Some even suggested that the boys may not have been unalived at all, and had escaped or were hidden away, perhaps in exile, living in secrecy under assumed identities. One of the most intriguing claims came in 1491, when a man named Perkin Warbeck appeared in Europe, claiming to be Richard, Duke of York, the younger of the two princes. Warbeck garnered support from several European monarchs, as well as factions within England itself, and posed a significant threat to Henry VII's reign. However, after being captured and imprisoned in the Tower of London, Warbeck confessed that his claim was false, likely under torture, and he was executed in 1499. Despite this, some continued to believe that Warbeck had been the real prince, and that the true story of the boy's disappearance remained hidden. The mystery of the prince's fate remained unsolved for centuries, but in 1674, during renovations of the Tower of London, workmen uncovered a wooden box buried under a staircase. Inside were two small skeletons, believed to be the remains of children. Many immediately assumed that these were the bones of Edward V and Richard, Duke of York. King Charles II ordered the bones to be placed in an urn and interred in Westminster Abbey, where they remain to this day. However, the discovery did little to solve the mystery definitively. Were these the bones of the princes, or had the workers stumbled upon the remains of other children, perhaps from an earlier period? No official investigation took place at the time, and it wasn't until much later that the remains were subjected to modern forensic analysis, but even then, the results were inconclusive. Over the centuries, historians, researchers, and conspiracy theorists have all weighed in on the mystery of the princes. Richard III remains the most popular suspect in their unaliving, but other theories persist. Some suggest that Henry VII was responsible, seeking to remove any rival claims to the throne once and for all. Others believe that the boys may have been unalived by one of Richard III's supporters, possibly without his direct knowledge, in a bid to secure his hold on the crown. In 1933, a detailed examination of the bones in Westminster Abbey was conducted. The findings suggested that the remains could indeed belong to two boys of approximately the right age, but the evidence was far from definitive. Without modern DNA testing, which has yet to be done, it remains impossible to say with certainty whether the remains are those of the lost princes. The disappearance of Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, has captivated imaginations for over 500 years. Their story represents not only a tragic episode in the annals of English history, but also a chilling reminder of the ruthless pursuit of power. Whether they were unalived by their Uncle Richard III, another royal figure, or some other unseen hand, the prince's fate remains a haunting mystery. Even today, the tale of the princes in the tower is taught in schools, dramatized in literature and film, and discussed by historians and enthusiasts alike. It is a story that transcends time, drawing us into a world where ambition, betrayal, and unaliving lie hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed once again. The Princes in the Tower is a tale that endures not just because of the horror of two young boys disappearing, but because of the sheer uncertainty that surrounds their fate. As the centuries roll on, the Tower of London still stands, casting its long shadow over the city, and deep within its walls, the ghosts of Edward V and Richard of York remain, their mystery unsolved, their legacy forever tied to one of England's most notorious unsolved mysteries.